PLD Projects presents Holy Snokes, the Star Wars podcast, featuring PLD and Matty Gunner. May the Force be with you, always. Holy Snokes! It's Holy Snokes. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to PLD Projects. Welcome to Holy Snokes, a Star Wars podcast. I am your host, PLD, and with me, as always, Mr. Matty Gunner. How are you doing today, my friend?
Snoke him if you got him.
Snoke
on the water.
Snoking aces.
Snoking aces.
Where there's Snoke, there's...
Where there's smoke, there's fire. Trying to think of any other...
Blowing Snoke up your ass.
Blowing Snoke up your ass. We're just giving the Scoundrels boys ammo at this point. Shout out to Scoundrels of the Force, you know. I've been rapping.
They're just Scoundrels Inc. We were Scoundrels of the Force. They're Scoundrels Inc. That's right.
Scoundrels Inc. I mean, we are all one with the Force, so technically they are Scoundrels of the Force.
Absolutely, that's true.
Shout out to those guys. That wasn't a dig. My brain is like PLD was on Class Action yesterday. My brain is a bit foggy today.
A little smoky, if it were. A
little smoky. Yeah.
That's fair. I feel a little bit more clear today, so I'll be able to handle that side of things. Yeah, but shout out to the Scoundrels, and we love those boys over there. Kevin Smets, Brandon Hanna, Frank Janis, Sean Sullivan. I know Kevin Smets is a guest star now. I know that, but he's always a
seasonal co-host.
Seasonal co-host.
We like to call our guests. He's a seasonal co-host.
Right, absolutely. You never know, we might have some guests on here at some point too. I kind of dropped the ball a little bit on that in terms of we had Ken Knapsack on, the great Ken Knapsack, once a little while back. We talk about doing it always, but I always kind of feel weird about doing it. I don't know why, but I feel like who wants to be on our show? I don't know. It's like a self-deprecating thing. Like, who wants to be on our show?
I feel like we did Ken, and now it's just like,
right. Who lives up to that?
Like we've hit the pinnacle.
The peak
when we got to talk to Ken. So
someday, though, I think someday I'll get over my my self-deprecation and say, yeah, why not? Because I think people would love to get to hang out with us and talk Star Wars.
I got a few people that we could do, but I don't know if it'd be a very family-friendly show.
That's a good point. We always kind of veer on that line where we're like mostly Star Wars, fairly friendly, but then every once in a while we start saying blow Snoke up your ass.
And then it gets 40 minutes into the show, and I start dropping F-bombs every 2 minutes.
We're trying our best. Folks. We are not perfect, obviously. Like it's a good Star Wars life lesson. You don't have to be perfect. Look at that. Either way. All right. Today, you like that? Today, that's today's topic. That is our big topic of discussion. Like we do here on Holy Snokes every week, we try to do hit the first half hour or so, be news or however long it takes us, go through the news of the week. Then we have a special topic of the day. A lot of times before, when we first started, it was reviewing The Bad Batch, was reviewing Mandalorian, the latest episodes. With nothing currently on air as a new show, we are trying some new directions, some different avenues. We might eventually go into some rewatches as well. It's something that's definitely going to be happening in the future, I think. We started that on Scoundrels of the Force way back when, but I think we might have to start again and try from a different vantage point that we have now. But a lot of good stuff to talk about today, including our discussion about life lessons and what Star Wars has taught us. It's funny, this is a Matty pitched idea. I'll give you the credit or throw you under the bus, whichever one. We'll see at the end of the episode which one it is.
It came to me because, speaking of Scoundrels Inc., this was a question I posed to them on their show. It was like, what is a lesson that Star Wars has taught you? Fully expecting to get some hilariously funny answers from those boys. And what they actually came out with was very deep and insightful stuff. So I was like, that's a conversation that I would like to have with you at some point.
Well, I really appreciate that because, quite frankly, I something I think about quite a bit. I know we're also listening. We're shouting out every Star Wars podcast, obviously, but Force Center always has to do with one of their main focuses on it is the themes of the show and the themes and what that means. So they often discuss similar ideas of what they think of as lessons. which since I started listening to them more intently, which really started like at the end of last year, it has forced me to think about that kind of stuff more than I usually would. Not that I never thought about it before, but it was more of a passive thing. I get more active with it. So when you asked me that, I was kind of like, I love the idea because it's right up my alley with what I'm doing recently. Although I did come back and I wasn't very clear about what we do on our show. I don't try to hide anything. I like to talk about directly what we talked about. I asked you, I'm kind of like, well, were you doing one big life lesson? Or are you doing little life lessons? Because I kind of feel like I find a lot of little things, which I guess if you put them all together, adds to a big overall. But it's going to be an interesting conversation for sure.
And here's another reason I want to talk to you specifically about this is we talk about how Star Wars is a generational thing. You are a father. So what lessons would you want Star Wars to pass down to your son?
Yes.
Or your daughter? What lessons would you want passed down to your children, the next generation, that you learn from Star Wars?
Right. And that's always a great topic in Force. As George Lucas has always said, Star Wars is about families, generations, fathers, sons, mothers, daughters. So it is a perfect avenue of discussion. But first, of course, we always get to our news. But before we do that, how was your week? As far as, did you have anything new Star Wars happen to you in your week? Anything you watched? Anything you came up with or got involved with?
Nah, nothing Star. I did watch the Ted Lasso finale today though, which that show. I know this is a Star Wars podcast, but like I haven't done anything remotely related to Star Wars this week, so
that's fine.
Talk about a show that gives great life lessons. That show is just. And one thing I did notice is that everyone's saying, "Oh, this is the series finale." The promo clip said season finale, not series. It said season finale. So I don't think this is the end of the story of Ted Lasso. I think this is the end of this part of the story.
Well, I agree with that. It's actually funny, and I did blindside you with that question, so I'm glad you had to pivot to Ted Lasso. That's fine, because I love Ted Lasso as well, and Ted Lasso actually shares a lot of life lessons with Star Wars. I'm not going to lie. I put on my Twitter feed, it's probably the most positive show I can imagine in history. I mean, by positive, I always feel, even when we have sad moments, even when there was like tough, like tackling real emotional challenges and stuff, I always felt kind of a positive feeling of life after that show. It's a very life-affirming show. I've also been on that bandwagon with you about the season finale. It's very specific because I checked other Apple TV shows and it does say series finale when it is. I kind of have the feeling what's going to happen is we're going to get possibly the Richmond Way
AFC Richmond show.
Exactly, the Richmond Way instead of the Ted Lasso, because it's not all about Ted. As he said in the finale, kind of thing.
That scene with the book. Oh my god!
Exactly.
The thing is, I will know because I live fairly close to Richmond.
Right.
Like I go through Richmond on the way to the gym, so I will see if something is filming in town. So then I'll be like, oh, okay, yeah, duh.
I kind of feel like one thing I'll put out there before we get back to Star Wars is that a lot of people also said, they've kind of pulled these quotes where like Jason Sudeikis and a bunch of people said, like. This series was intended to go 3 seasons. Our story was always 3 seasons long, yada, yada, yada. But all those quotes never, ever say this is the end. It's just saying that the initial story that they wanted to tell
no one's ever really gone.
Long. No one's ever really gone. So the story is right. That still can be true. That the story they initially set out to tell is done. It doesn't mean there's not other stories to tell. So I wouldn't be surprised if you get something in the future. There's plenty of story left. If you watch the finale, there's a lot of setup.
Add to that, Rupert is essentially Palpatine.
He really is, actually.
If you even look at his office, it's set out like Palpatine's throwing them.
And when he goes on, he went on, minor spoiler, when he goes on to the pitch during the match, he actually has like a dark trench coat that basically looks like a dark black cloak and cape. Yep. It really is pretty much set up like that.
Tells him to, spoiler alert, take out the, in my opinion, the MVP of the season of Jamie Tart. I think Jamie Tart, and forgive me, I forget the actor's name who plays Jamie Tart, has had the best character arc throughout this season.
Absolutely.
I love him and Roy. I know you're a big Brett Goldstein fan.
I am, yes.
I am. Those two together is just magic.
Phil Dunster is his
Phil
name.
Dunn.
Phil
He's
Dunster.
English. He's English, right? He's not American.
I believe so. I believe so.
Okay.
And just so you know, real quick, there's actually an article about Phil Dunster saying he doesn't know if he has his job or not. Interesting.
Well, no, technically, no one has a job right now because of
Right.
the writer's strike. The director's strike is coming up.
Of course.
SAG-AFTRA are putting it to their board.
Yeah, absolutely. I tried to think about that too much, but it is something we should think about. Obviously, I mean, as much as we can do, we should have to bond with those the unions. They're doing the forces work, so to speak. But
AI isn't writing that final episode of Ted Lasso.
No,
it damn sure isn't writing that final episode of Succession.
Damn sure I'm not. That's not a show. It's great. But here we go. Let's not make this two mediocre white dudes on film where we banter for 5 hours before we
two mediocre white dudes on TV.
On TV until we get there. That could be a different topic on their day. Maybe that'll be a good 4 mediocre white dudes Patreon exclusive podcast we'll do in June. Talk all about the endings of those episodes. Let's get into our what we're supposed to be here for, a galaxy far, far away. Let's hit that shuttle. Let's hit that hyperspace. We're punching it, Chewie. We're getting there. Let's start with the news we got. Of course, I curated all this news from Star Wars News.net. I pitch it every week. It's almost like they sponsor us, but they don't. I just love the site so much as far as how they curate things because they're always
they can if they want.
They can, absolutely. If you want to, we're open. My DMs are definitely open. But they curate the show wonderfully. They curate the news wonderfully. They let us know what's true, what's fact, what's rumor. They present it in a good way. Here's the interviews, what happened, what's said. So it's not a lot of, they have their editorials as well, but it's all basically, here's what it was said, here's what it is, and let you kind of decide where do you fall on it. One of the first news bits I wanted to talk about was an interview that Esquire had with Mark Hamill, who is out promoting his new movie. I believe it's I forget what it's called now. Actually,
no, it's The Machine with
Machine. That's
Kreischer.
I kept wanting to say Monster, but I know it's not. It's The Machine.
No, it's basically it's set around this bit that Bert Kreischer has been telling for I think the last 10 years. He's ended every show with it, and I guess people love this bit so much that he's just never retired it.
Right.
And they made a movie out of it, and I've heard it's not that great, but
unfortunate.
I is the thing. He came up around the same time as he was part of that Ice House comedy group with Joe Rogan, Tom Segura, and all those guys, the guys that used to do the old school Rogan podcast before, when it was in just the back of the Ice House or the back of the comedy store.
Right.
So I would hear him, and guys like Joey Diaz, and I would hear him tell that bit on the podcast so many times. I'm just okay, he's doing a movie. And then I heard Mark Hamill was part of it, and I was like, wait, what?
I will say that one cool thing about that, I did actually see a quick interview with Mr. Kreischer himself, and he talked about how awesome it was working with Mark Hamill. He's a Star Wars fan as well, and he said that basically he spent his whole time filming with Mark Hamill as a way to pepper him with questions about the original trilogy, Harrison Ford smoking pot, Carrie Fisher being all sorts of things. And he said that Mark Hamill couldn't be more gracious about answering questions that he's probably answered a billion times. He said that Mark Hamill understands his position in the fandom and what his I shouldn't. He called it a responsibility to the fandom, and I don't believe he meant it in terms of that Mark Hamill owes us anything, but that Mark Hamill understands what he means to the fans of Star Wars, and he's very gracious about always giving his time and giving everybody the answers that they want to know, because he's such a celebrated figure in the galaxy far, far away, as well as now on Earth itself. But
if Mark Hamill's due to go on Bert Kreischer's podcast, so that'd be a good one.
That should be a lot of fun. I bet that'd be very fun. But during this interview about the machine, of course, Star Wars is going to come up when Mark Hamill's interviewing. It's something he has definitely been accepting of a long time. People asked about a young Luke series potentially coming to ground, and he had an interesting comment to make. He stated, and I quote, "People say, oh, now you're going to be able to do a whole series of Luke post-Return of the Jedi," regarding his obviously de-aging in Book of Boba Fett and his de-aging in The Mandalorian. And he said, I don't think so. First of all, they don't need to tell those stories, but if they do, they could get an age-appropriate actor, which of course stokes the fires of a lot of different contentious discussions within the Star Wars fan base, and I bet honestly within Lucasfilm itself. Do they need to tell the Luke stories? No, the biggest Luke stories have been told overall. I think there's a lot of opportunity to mine the stories of Luke, especially in that between 6 and 7 range, about the Jedi Temple, about him and Ben Solo, about him and Laura Santeca, things of that nature, him establishing the temple. I think there's a lot of stories that maybe you don't necessarily need them, but we don't need any stories. But then that's the idea is, well, we have the idea that Lucasfilm's been very, hesitant about recasting, especially after the Alden Ehrenreich Solo stuff, which I will still maintain. I think they learned the wrong lesson from Solo. I don't think it was necessarily.
I don't think they learned any lesson from Solo. Solo.
Okay, no lesson at all. I think they learned the wrong lesson because they kind of said they didn't want to recast the characters anymore. But then the other side is people who would like to see the technology push forth and get us Mark Hamill in the younger age. The fact that he's saying they could get an age appropriate actor sounds to me like he doesn't really want to do any more of the young Luke stuff, at least especially as far as a big series goes. I kind of feel like he's left it open in terms of like if he was asked to do an appearance somewhere here or there, maybe say a New Republic movie with Dave Filoni, maybe he would make a young appearance potentially. But it feels like he's pushing more towards the recasting. What do you think about? What's your thoughts and what your thoughts on what he's saying?
I like it. I like that he's on my side of things of get Alden in to play Han again, get Billy Lord in to play Leia, I've always said that Sebastian Stan is probably like the go-to for Luke, but and I don't mean this like disrespectfully, Sebastian Stan's starting to get on a little bit. He's in terms of like, he's done a lot of action stuff, and I've seen like behind the scenes videos of him like doing stunts as the Winter Soldier. That stuff takes a toll on your body. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm all for it. I fully agree with him. Because I also think it gives different actors the opportunity to play an iconic character that they grew up watching. If someone called me like in, I don't know, whenever, and said, "Hey, do you want to be the body of the new Darth Maul?" Yeah, I'm in.
Right.
Cool. But I love Ray Park. I love Sam Witwer. But I'm still going to take that opportunity if it's offered to me.
Of course you would. Absolutely. I'm in agreement. I know for a long time I kind of was I was kind of leaning on the let's use this technology to do so. I think that is a dangerous slope at this point, especially as we are leaning more and more towards AI and things of that nature. And I feel it does take away from the artists we have working today. The Star Wars I've been kind of like using as an exception because I'm like, well, Star Wars is a different beast to me because I love it so much. I kind of want to see the Luke I grew up with. I understand that. But at the same time, you put it in front of me, I'll definitely accept it because I'm somebody who loves Solo. I loved Alden Ehrenreich's performance as Han Solo. I totally understood. I don't think you needed to get Harrison Ford DH for that. And I don't think you need to get Mark Hamill DH for Luke. I would say, though, I'm kind of off the Sebastian Stan train for several reasons, partially because he's getting older, and secondly, because I think if you're going to do it, I think we should get an unknown actor. Get someone who doesn't have any baggage. Not that Sebastian Stan has baggage, but he's a known quantity. We've seen him before. There's someone we haven't seen. Give them a chance, first of all, to make their mark. And secondly, I feel like it's easier for me to accept this person as a Luke Skywalker if he doesn't have any history, if I don't have any history with them. So I don't know who it would be. I would hope that Mark Hamill would be willing to kind of like coach, maybe have like him, maybe hire him to kind of like help with the character. And I have him meet with the subject, and maybe he'll have some discussions on things. But yeah, I agree. I think it should be. I think I like where Mark Hamill's stance is on it. I do think he will play things by ear, and he'll approach each project with the idea of, well, what does Lucasfilm want from me, and do I agree with what's happening? We'll have to see. It's also, of course, why I pitched the idea of the animated series telling these Luke stories, but that's another topic, really.
I'm just looking up this list here. A lot of people seem to be clamoring for Tom Holland
as Luke
to play younger Luke. Oof. He's definitely got the athleticism for it, but I don't know about that. Joseph Gordon-Levitt's another one on this list. Elijah Wood, definitely not. Kurt,
I
Ru- Kurt Russell, tying back into our conversation yesterday on Class Action. That would be hilarious. Luke Skywalker with an eye patch.
that'd be nice. A little Snake Skywalker.
But
Uh,
so I listened to the Fake Doctors Real Friends podcast, which is a Scrubs rewatch podcast with Zach Braff and Donald Faison. Obviously,
Right.
Donald Faison is a
huge Star Wars fan.
huge Star Wars fan. He was in Resistance as Hype Faison. He's said for the past 3 episodes in a row now that if he dies and they use an AI version of him to be in Star Wars, he would be so pissed.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
Like he doesn't want an AI version of him to be used in Star Wars.
Interesting. Okay. Very interesting. Well, then that says that he's on record. I don't think there had any thoughts of using Hype Phase on, unfortunately, anytime soon. Resistance seems.
Oh no, he meant period. Like do
in
not
period.
use an AI version of him for anything in Star Wars. He wants
Gotcha.
to be the one to do it.
Right. Well, that would make sense. I mean, I wouldn't want. I mean, anyway, that's that. Yeah, I fully agree with that. Okay. The other part of the discussion kind of led to this part of the discussion was they mentioned the Ray movie, the episode 10, as we were kind of calling it. It was not episode 10. And he was asked whether he would return for that. Obviously, that becomes a much more straightforward type of question because he can do it at his age at this point and not have to worry about de-aging or anything like that. His response was, one thing you learn working for Lucasfilm, everything is confidential. Everything is confidential. So if I were involved, I wouldn't be able to tell you. And if I were not involved, I wouldn't be able to tell you. So I don't know. We'll all find out together, I guess. That's a lot, I feel like, and I don't want to hype anything up, but that feels like that they might have talked to him a little bit, and that maybe he's going to be appearing potentially. He isn't needed depending on the storyline. I don't think at this point. I don't think you really need his character anymore. The Skywalker saga is done, as it were. But Rey is a Skywalker. Rey is a Skywalker. So if you're going to have Rey have it tied to, either way, I don't think this is not going to be a New Adventures of Luke Skywalker film at all. But to potentially be as a Force ghost to talk to Rey at some point, perhaps she needs some advice. I wouldn't be surprised if we get Mark Hamill involved. It seems like it's good for the fans. It's good for everybody else. Yeah.
When are fans gonna let go? When are we gonna let? There's gonna come a time when, unfortunately, and I don't touch wood, this doesn't happen anytime soon. Unfortunately, Mark Hamill's not gonna be here.
I know. I agree.
So what are we gonna do? We're gonna keep clinging on. New stories have to be told. Trust me, if Mark Hamill shows up is in season 4 of The Mandalorian, I'm gonna lose my mind. If he shows up in the big New Republic movie, I'm gonna lose my mind. I love Mark Hamill. This is not me saying I don't love Mark Hamill's Luke, but at the same time, it's like I would much rather it be focused on Rey and the story they are trying to tell with the character of Rey. Yeah, you can have her be like, what would Luke do in my situation? But for her to keep running back to Luke for advice, it just shows what's she gonna do? Build the same order that Luke tried to build, that the Jedi tried to build in the Galactic Republic? We've seen that now. Right. So I would hope that Rey would take the lessons from Luke of what not to do and build something of her own volition.
I don't necessarily disagree. At the same time, I'm going to go back to what you said at the beginning of this statement. We won't have Mark for long, forever. I should say for long. God, that feels even worse. I'm going to knock on wood as myself. We're going to have a time that Mark Hamill's no longer able to do it. To me, that's well, we should probably use him while we got him then. We should try to get as much time with him as possible. So while I agree with your statement, I agree with this should definitely focus more on Rey and what she's doing. And I think it will. But I think that if we have appearances by Mark Hamill as Luke, like you said, well, first of all, I'm all okay with it. And while story-wise, I agree, it could probably make more sense to not have him in it to a degree. I think there's ways you can have him in it and it won't affect the story. It'll affect the story in a positive way. And it'll be a kind of fan service that will be a positive thing. But again, it all depends on how it's done. And I kind of trust Mark Hamill to do the right thing, to be understanding what he's doing. And I have a feeling that everybody wants to make everybody happy, and while you can't make everybody happy, they're going to do the thing that they feel is right, and I can't ask for more than that. So, yeah, I think we'll get him. I think honestly, it makes more sense, to be completely honest. It makes more sense to have Adam Driver come back as Ben Solo.
That's the one. But my thing is, I think Adam Driver's too far gone at this point. I think I think until he's got the bag with Star Wars, he's made his money, like he's good. I think now he's like so focused, and like whenever you watch interviews with him, he's so focused on getting that Oscar. He wants that Oscar.
Yeah, but you know what? He also did 65. So
I
mean, like,
that was probably a paycheck that his manager was like, "Look, dude, you're not going to get this Oscar this year. Like, you need something to tide you over."
Well, here's the thing. Also, the kind of thing we're looking for Ben Solo, I don't think. Again, it wouldn't be the Adventures of Ben Solo. I think it would be a small role. It'd be kind of like a 1 or 2 scene kind of thing. He could probably shoot it in 1 or 2 days potentially if done right. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I don't think we. I mean, we don't need either of them. But it'd be an interesting way to discuss, especially with the Diana the Force thing that they introduced Rise of Skywalker. Whether or not you like Rise of Skywalker, that's another story entirely. But it did introduce that interesting bit of lore, and it would be interesting to explore that a little bit in a way, if it makes sense again with the story. We don't know the story, so it's hard to tell what makes sense and what doesn't. There's a lot of potential.
I would love, if they are going to use Luke, I would love for it to just be a scene of him like continuing the way he was and the character that Rian Johnson started to develop of him, of Luke just being like taking the lesson that he learned from Yoda and just be like, "Hey, you figure it out."
Yeah,
these Jedi texts, like, don't need them. Go figure it out. Same lesson that Yoda taught to Luke. Luke could just be like, "Look, those books, page turners, were they not? Like, just do you like?"
Well, I want something completely different. I want something completely on its own. I want the campfire scene where all the Force ghosts are hanging out, making s'mores. Luke, Anakin, Obi-Wan, Yoda, Ben Solo, the Ahsoka. Maybe we don't even know if she's dead, but she has the voice on Rise of Skywalker, so who knows? All of them are there, just hanging out, making s'mores. And Rey comes and says, "Hey, what's going on? Let's have a camp out."
You want a weekend at Bernie's of Force ghosts?
Yeah, that is exciting. That sounds exciting. All right, let's move on to a couple other news bits we have. First of all, the Skeleton Crew writers were unveiled. This is kind of a fun thing. It's not really a scoop anymore. They aren't scoops. They actually get put on.
I was going to say, when they revealed a while ago?
They were talked about, but it was never. This was not for Skeleton Crew. The directors were revealed for Skeleton Crew, not the writers. Okay. The WGA, who we of course are backing fully with their support, they have a website that they put on all the writers of the episodes. Not a whole lot to discuss. I will say that it looks like Christopher Ford and showrunner John Watts, who are a team, wrote episodes 1 through 4 and 7 through 8. Now, this team, obviously, wrote Watts' first few films together, which was the horror movie Clown, which I haven't seen yet. I've heard good things. The thriller Cop Car, which I have seen with Kevin Bacon. Mm-hmm. I did enjoy that one quite a bit. And they did take a pass at Spider-Man Homecoming, that obviously John Watts is heavily involved with. So I like that idea because I like them as a duo so far. Everything I've seen from them, I've enjoyed. And I've heard good things about the things I haven't seen yet, but I will watch that. Clown's definitely on my list to watch, especially because of Skeleton Crew. I want to get more of a feel from the Watts and Ford team. And the other 2 episodes 5 through 6, are going to be written by and please excuse my pronunciation, I don't know. It's young Joe Wessner. I don't know. I don't know much about her. I guess she only has public credits of an episode of the upcoming Hulu murder mystery series Career Opportunities in Murder and Mayhem. And that's really it. So I don't know where she came from. I don't know where she goes. Is she Cotton Eye Joe? I don't know.
I was as soon as you said that, I was like, don't do it. Don't. I was like trying to stop myself.
I'll never stop. Any thoughts about the writers? Anything catching? Anything to comment on that?
I'll be honest. It's hard because I have no idea who they are, other than obviously John. Obviously, the main 2.
Right.
But if it's anything like what we've been told it is, Goonies in space with a little bit of a horror mixed in.
Sounds good.
Sounds good to me.
Like I said, I like No Watts, and I don't like the fact that he's writing the bulk of the majority of the series. It's kind of like a Filoni-esque kind of move, Filoni and Favreau kind of thing. So they really know what they want, story they want to tell. They have an idea of how they want to tell it. So sometimes if you have a talented enough writer who is also a director, sometimes that writing and directing can be lead to a more cohesive story at times, I feel. So I'm all for it. I'm happy for it. As well as a newcomer, hey, let's get newcomers involved. I like the idea of new talent in Star Wars. Let's see what you have. Give it to us, kid. I say kid because I have no idea how old she is. She could be a 70-year-old kid. I wouldn't know. But it's either way. All right, moving on to our next bit of news. We have two more pieces of news I want to discuss. They had an interview again that was released. Obviously, the passing of Ray Stevenson. We talked about the interview last time, I believe, one of the interviews he had. They released a more full version of this interview. It was on Entertainment Weekly, and it wasn't just with Ray. It was with a bunch of the Ahsoka cast, and they had a couple different quotes I wanted to mention and see what your thoughts were. From Ray Stevenson, he said, "I think it takes a good guy to play a good bad guy or girl. You know what I mean? You're known as the nicest baddies until we got to work. I had no idea what to expect. You're turning up and you're held. I mean, one of the things that was so overwhelming at first was the costume, our works of art, set design. Do you think who designed this? And then you look at the set construction, who constructed this? The quality that is surrounding you in technical and creative talent is quite breathtaking. You've got to summon it up from the balls of your feet to stand your ground, and you're given the confidence from Dave and John, from your fellow actors, which is incredible." And then he continues on to say, and it's just such an untold journey with Balin and Shin. And they kind of keep you second guessing. Are they? What is going on? What are they actually up to? At first they appear this, and then it develops into, it could be this. What is it? And there's something else. So it's a very exciting role to play. And he's kind of inherent ability. It's like if you don't stand in his way, he's got no malicious attitude at all. But if you do, you'll just be swept aside because there's something that's driving him. Mr. Filoni and Favreau know, and hopefully it's going to be revealed throughout the telling. And I mean breathtaking.
Sounds like the Star Wars thing. A bad guy with a code, bad guy with a code.
Absolutely. To me, I get the joyousness of it. Like, he is so again, rest in power, my friend, because he seemed like such one of us. He loves what he's doing. He had such a great time, and he totally believes in the character. He believes in Filoni and Favreau. He believes in his fellow cast members. You listen to him, because this is a video interview. If you go to the Star Wars News app, they'll show you the video interview, and he just you look on his face. He really, sometimes you see actors who kind of like, they do their thing, they have the interviews, they talk about it, and they're very, he's really into it. He's really
like the Cavill interview where he starts talking about Warhammer 40,000.
Absolutely, it's the joy on his face. He's completely 100% committed to it. It's wonderful. It is very wonderful. Of course, another thing you mentioned was many of the actors have these stories, and I never get sick of hearing about them. The idea that, of course, everyone makes the lightsaber noise. I feel like everyone has to. I think if you get cast, it's a part of it now. He said that. And it's a quote that he said, "I must admit, the first time you turn your lightsaber on, you make the noise. Everybody does that. You just can't help it. Everybody works at such a pitch. And what I'm overwhelmed with overall is the humility of greatness. From the top all the way down, from every department, the hours put in, the quality of work. You can't wait to get back to set and see what's going to be revealed that day. And they trained you for your character. You turn up with a stunt team. It's awe-inspiring what they developed, as if by sequence, because of what they've already worked out and thrown out and worked through. You step up until you're a puddle on the ground, but then seeing it on the day come together, they're working camera angles out or actually rehearsing for the fights. All of it's meshed, and it's just, I stand there stoically going, making a Balin face, supposedly. And then it comes the Viper making a lot of shooting sounds, and you're like, that's awesome, that's great. And then Rosario, vroom, makes another sound, and see the noise, and the weapon sounds start going all over the place. Again, it's just awesome seeing like what they have to say. Now, and finally, thing enough is that Ivano Sanko, who plays Shin, followed up and said, "Ray, you would constantly make noises. And I remember the first scene you were filming, you came up with a song for Shin. I mean, I can't say too much about the scene itself, but Ray would walk around and be like, 'Who let the shit out?' Boom, boom, boom."
That is British humor right there.
It just seems so fun. It seemed like they had a great time on set, right? And you love that. You love that if they're enjoying themselves, that kind of sometimes shines through to the product itself. Even if it's not a happy-go-lucky show, the fact that they're enjoying themselves, they have that energy. Because if you're having fun, you're having the energetic self, you can't help but put that energy into the work.
Yeah, and I was watching the Keanu Reeves podcast with Scott Adkins when they were talking about filming John Wick 4 together.
Right.
And you see like the look of just like excitement on Keanu's face that he got to work with Scott Adkins and Donnie Yen, and he's like talking with like such reverence of like working with these two action legends and like learning different things. And then he goes, but it was so hard. It was so difficult. Like trying to catch up with you, like trying to keep up with you two was so difficult for me because I'm getting on in my age, and it was just like it's hard. It's tough for the guy, but he's still having the time of his life doing it.
Absolutely,
What's
absolutely.
what's the saying? If you love what you do, you never have to work a day in your life.
There you go. That's exactly it. And it's very true. It's very, very true. And it seemed like Ray was definitely not working in his last couple of projects. He seemed very excited. And I know I'm excited to see him once again in Star Wars. Hopefully, it's a fitting finale for him, although I think he was working on a few other things. I don't know if they're going to come out or not. But this was very exciting. So. All right, we have one more piece of news to discuss, and then we'll move on to our main topic of conversation. This is from One Take News. Now, this is something I follow on Twitter. They're a very, very, as far as I'm concerned, your miles may vary. They're a very reputable source. They do all sorts of scoops and rumors and things. They always do it. They always do it in a respectful manner, and they always. And I have found them to have a great track record as far as I'm concerned. And when they have been on the off occasion, not have been wrong, they've always been very accountable. They hold themselves accountable, and they come out and say, "Yep, I got this one wrong," and they kind of tell why. Not like getting into deep; they can't reveal sources or anything else. But they say, "This is what we heard. This is why we heard this. I'm not sure why this was this way," and they work on getting them great relationships where they can be accurate. So when One Take News says something, I listen because it's usually pretty verifiable. And this particular piece of news was not really news to us per se. Something I think we all kind of thought was a good, strong possibility of what's happening. They report that Tamira Morrison is definitively coming back to Ahsoka to play Rex. So this is the return of Rex. Thus the thumbnail we had created today for today's show. Rex is supposedly coming back. Again, not confirmed. This is not official. If you watch Ahsoka, maybe he's not in there. Maybe they got it wrong. But I feel like at this point, with Dave Filoni in charge, Dave Filoni writing everything, with this being very much a Rebels continuation of sorts, it would just make sense knowing that Rex, we know that canonically Rex survived the Battle of Endor, the end of Rebels. During the speech by Sabine, she says that Hera and Rex were at the Battle of Endor, and that they survived it. We don't know what happened to Rex after Endor. It makes all the sense in the world. We get to see him in Ahsoka, and I am excited for it and happy for it. And I think I would actually be a little upset if he wasn't in it in some way, if we didn't get to figure it out. Not to say that I would if it doesn't happen and I'm not going to boycott the show or not be happy with the show, but this means a lot to me because I love the character so much. What about you?
I mean, yeah, I like you. I love the character of Rex, and seeing him hopefully get the closure of his story. I think it's going to be a little bit weird seeing Tamora Morrison with a white beard, but yeah, I think the character of Rex is important to the development of Ahsoka. I don't think with six or 8 episodes, however many we're getting, the amount of story they tell, I wouldn't be surprised if we don't get a lot of Rex.
I agree.
But at the same time, at least we're getting him.
That's what I like to say as well.
Supposedly, speculating responsibly. Right. I mean, to me, it's a yeah, duh.
Right.
But how many yeah, duh moments have we had where, and then Star Wars and Lucasfilm would turn around and kind of,
duh.
Like,
yeah, exactly.
You thought.
I mean, I do think that Ahsoka, like you mentioned it, Ahsoka and Rex's story are so intertwined. Obviously, the Clone Wars movie where we introduce Ahsoka really gets introduced to Rex. More time with Rex than she does with Anakin in the beginning part of it. We have the moments where they have the end of Clone Wars, like they had together. They had those great moments together during Order 66. Beyond the rest of the Clone Wars, they had the moments in Rebels where they had their connections.
Tales of the Jedi.
Tales of the Jedi. It's all a lot of intertwined with their story. So it makes sense that if we're going to get I don't know why I say it's the end of Rex, because you never know. It's a fictional story at this point, but I feel like this might be the end of Rex potentially.
I think this would be a good end.
Yeah. Although I will say again, part of One Take News, they did state they were not able to confirm whether they said that we don't know if Rex is dead during the New Republic era and this is a flashback or if this is Rex in current time, which we don't know because there is that's set up for a possibility of flashbacks because we kind of see Sabine with the
Anakin's dead in this time and Hayden's in the show.
Supposedly in the show again. It's been supposedly, never been officially confirmed. A lot of things we don't know about, right? So it's like I always want to put that out there.
Be.
I think so too. I do think so, but I always have to, unless we've seen him on screen or unless it's been officially announced by Lucasfilm or Star Wars, I want to always put that caveat out there that because that's how you get the wrong impression and how we get very disappointed and how people start getting mad. They had never said this. They've never said that Hayden's involved. It's just been coming from the rumor sheet.
But we also know that it's Filoni, and he would have been dying to have a live action Anakin and Ahsoka together.
Of course,
it seems one of those things that it's just like I would be shocked if that doesn't happen.
I would be too, but I feel it's my responsibility just to throw that caveat out there.
Okay.
Responsibly. The other part of the topic of conversation from the same report, this one was more, in some ways, interesting to me, and yet also less quantifiable. Inside the report, there was a mention that Lucasfilm executives were so impressed on how the series came together, and that it itself was a very big factor in Dave Filoni getting his own Star Wars movie. The film obviously was acting as the culmination of the ongoing plot thread that was started with Mandalorian and will continue with Ahsoka and beyond. But it was so impressive that that was kind of like the tipping point and said, okay, Dave, you're ready to do a live action film. And of course, the second season, suppose is going to depend on how the first one performs. I can't see an area where this doesn't perform well. It seems like it's one of the most storytelling people have been wanting for a while. I think it's the most anticipated. But I mean, what are they going to say? They're going to say that Dave Filoni sucks so bad that's why they give him a Star Wars story. Obviously, they're not. They're going to hype him up. But if the report is that they were so excited that this was the tipping point, this sounds legitimate. It sounds like something that happened, and I'm excited about that if that's true because that means we might have something really special on our hands. So
in Filoni we trust.
Okay, fair enough. All right. Well, that is the ending of a bit of news we had today. Now we are going to get into our main topic of discussion for the rest of the show. However long this takes us. Could be a long dive. It could be a short dive. We'll find out. Matty, why don't we start with you since you did pitch this idea? Let's let you go first.
So we talk about life lessons that Star Wars has taught us. It hasn't been long since I really started delving into the themes and I would say maybe the last 5-6 years that I've started really looking at the lessons that Star Wars teaches us as opposed to the pew pew warm all the action stuff
right.
I think the biggest one that I think I've learned is good and evil is a matter of perspective, which kind of taught me that I'm not always going to agree with people. Some people may have different worldviews that I don't agree with that I may consider to be wrong. And this isn't me, saying that people should believe, everything that we see evil people believe. If someone's a Nazi, you should punch the Nazi. But it also led me to realize that some people are brought up differently than me. Some people have perhaps been, it's the whole nature nurture thing, right? Some people are taught certain things and are brought up certain ways of life that I may never have had to go through. And I feel like it's taught me to be a lot more accepting and more engaged in conversation with those people and try to at least understand where they're coming from, even though I may not necessarily agree with them. I feel like Star Wars has taught me to open my mind to trying to understand different viewpoints that people come from, because it may not be where I come from, but it's still something that they believe. And unless it's something abhorrently evil, who am I to, tarnish what someone believes in? Maybe they have a perfectly justifiable reason for believing what they believe, because it's a way that they were brought up. It's something that, was taught to them by someone they respect. So I think that's one of the main things that Star Wars, I think, has taught me, is like just to be more open-minded and aware that people are going to have different viewpoints on things, be it pop culture, be it the world that we live in, and to not just straight up attack someone for having a certain viewpoint, but to like listen and try to understand it first. And then if it turns out they are a piece of shit because of it, then then attack them. But
from my point of view, the Jedi are evil.
From my point of view, the Jedi are evil, or at least arrogant.
Well, you're not wrong. I know that's been a long time discussion, and that leads to one of my points. I had my biggest life lesson that I was going to talk about, but I think I'll get to that next, because what you're talking about leads into one of the life lessons I wanted to talk about as well, and it is the arrogance of the Jedi to a degree. Now, I don't want to say that the Jedi have always intended well. They've always been intentioned. I think that there's a lot you should, as a people, we should aspire to be like the Jedi, not necessarily the Jedi we got in like the prequels, for necessarily not the Jedi we got, but the true Jedi tenets, so to speak. Kind of what Ahsoka learned for a while, that she could be a better Jedi, perhaps outside of the necessarily out of the order per se. It's like the difference between religion and spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
There's two sides to this. You can have a spirituality of the Jedi, of the Force, of their intentions, of what they're supposed to do, how they're supposed to feel, how they're supposed to interact with life, with people, with their surroundings. And sometimes that can get muddied in an organization that has to deal with the government side of things. They have to deal with the less savory side of things, potentially. Some necessarily evil, so to speak. I mean, you talk about government is something that is necessary. Anarchy is not necessarily an option as much as we'd like it to be, in a way, because there's some things you need government for. How it's supposed to be, how it's supposed to be done, and how it's supposed to, again, same type of thing though. If a government is done the right way, then it's supposed to be beneficial to the people. We don't always have that. We very rarely have that, unfortunately. But that's what it comes down to. So what are we true to? Are we true to the Jedi of our spirit, the Jedi of our religion? And about that, and kind of in tangent to that, so one of the Star Wars life lessons taught me is that you can be the wisest person in the room, wisest person in the galaxy, and still be wrong. Yoda, for example, is the living embodiment of this to me. I've watched Yoda throughout his story told life, as far as Empire Strikes Back, going back to the prequels, and this is someone who is known for his wisdom, known for his fortune cookie talk, but known for being probably one of the best embodiments of a Jedi. He is kind, he is generous, he is loving, he is someone who you aspire to be. He takes things calmly. He looks to the root of issues. He tries his best to be a good Jedi, a good person, for lack of a better word. And yet, a lot of things went down around him that I don't want to blame him, but he couldn't stop, even though he was the wisest. He knew things were going wrong during the era of the prequels. There was plenty of lines he had in the prequels where he started mentioning how the Jedi had become arrogant, talking almost directly to Mace Windu about the Jedi becoming arrogant and perhaps not doing what they're supposed to do. There's one of my favorite moments of Siege of Mandalore was the continuation of the meeting scene they had. We're talking about Palpatine, about Obi-Wan finding Grievous, and how Mace sends Anakin to talk to Palpatine to try to see what's like, are we done now, kind of thing. And then that's when Ahsoka comes in after Anakin leaves. So we got to get this continuation from Episode 3, the live action, to the animated version that we get with the Siege of Mandalore. And at the end of that moment, Ahsoka talked to them, talking to Mace and to Yoda, and she's talking about things. And Mace cuts her off and states basically, "Sorry, Citizen Tano, this is more for the Jedi Council at this point." And Ahsoka takes it well. She's like, "I understand. And Mace flips off. Yoda stays. And is like, "More to say? Do you want me to give you a message to Anakin for you, basically?" And she says something about, and he basically goes, so he kind of pokes at it. So, not as a Jedi. And Ahsoka says, "No, not as a Jedi yet. I'm not," basically saying, "I'm not ready to return yet," even though she's leaning that way. And Yoda sits there, understanding, kind, says it, but then also ends with, "May the Force be with you, Padawan." Saying basically what we're saying, you are a Jedi. Whether you're part of the Order or not, you are a true Jedi. And Yoda sees that. And Yoda has these discussions throughout. He fails. He fails on his battle against Palpatine. He fails by sending Obi-Wan to defeat Anakin, even though Obi-Wan obviously can't kill Anakin. He can't bring himself to do it. And we learn, and he says it best during The Last Jedi to Luke, our greatest teacher failure is, because he's been through it. But at the same time, it's something you have to learn as a life lesson. You could be the smartest person in the room, the wisest person in the room, and you can still fail. But failing isn't the end all. You always can still strive to be better, to make up for what you've done, and or to make up for what you've not done. So in some cases, in Yoda's case, is what he didn't do. But make sense.
Yeah, I think that's very well said, especially because when you bring up the conversation of the difference between religion and spirituality, one of my old jobs I used to work with this gentleman who was devout Muslim. And I came into that. I had no idea about the Muslim faith or anything, but we bonded over our love of jiu-jitsu, and like we were both into the same thing. And we would train together, and over time we became closer friends. And he would start teaching me about he knew that I had no interest in he wasn't trying to convert me or anything. He was just like, "Hey, this is what I believe.
Right.
Let me tell you about what I believe, what I have been brought up to believe." And I'm like, huh. We have some the core values are the same.
Right.
It's just the different. Now, obviously, there are some differences.
Right.
But it's the same core principles, just with a different, a different ideology, a different, image put over the front of it. It's just a different, the same message on a different poster, essentially.
Absolutely.
And I think, going back to Star Wars, I think that's why I've always gone more towards the dark side and the Sith, because they are essentially rebelling against that organized religion. Because that's something that I have nothing against people who are spiritual. It's more the organized governmental run side of religion. That's something that I'm firmly against. And when I look at the Sith, then they try to bring that down and take that away from the Jedi. That's where I'm like, yeah, bring the Jedi down a few notches to where they're supposed to be, to where Ahsoka was going to, where Qui-Gon got to. That's why the story, the tale of Dooku, is such a tragic story for me, because I feel like up until he turned, he was getting to that point now where he was realizing, look, this isn't the way we're supposed to be going, as not just as Jedi, but as people, as different species. We're supposed to be helping the galaxy, not furthering our own agenda to, like Mace Windu, try and get on the council. We shouldn't be pandering to a government that has a set agenda. We should be helping the people.
Right.
And I think that that's where the whole debate of like spirituality versus organized religion comes into it. That is why a lot of people will be like, why do you side with the Sith? I'm like, because ultimately, yes, they may be out for themselves, but someone needed to take the Jedi down a few pegs.
Hmm. So, I mean, it's not like you're actually rooting for galaxy domination and pure evil.
No.
But it's more that, again, a lot of the Sith came from some Sith. I mean, obviously, you got someone like Palpatine who's very selfish, and that's all he's doing. He's not a fallen Jedi. He is a Sith Lord. Count Dooku, his story that we've found, is more of a fallen Jedi who, if things were right, he might not have fallen. He definitely grew tempted by power and tempted by, he definitely had a lust for power to a degree that we all have to some notion. But if things were done properly and things were handled in a proper way, he wouldn't have fallen to the Sith entirely. He could have been like Qui-Gon, more of an outside the box Jedi, which is actually what should be happening. I think Yoda is actually, I would put Yoda in that category as well. Yoda just couldn't see a way. He just couldn't get enough outside the box. He wanted to change it from within as much as he could. But even he makes some mistakes, like I mentioned earlier. But talking about the Sith, for example, and like especially Dooku, one of the main life lessons I've always gotten from Star Wars related, and what I was mentioning earlier, is something I'd love to pass on to my children and everybody else, and hope this comes across the right way I intended to. Star Wars, for me, one of the main tenets of Star Wars is about redemption. And the pull of evil, the temptation of evil, and how, quite honestly, in life, we all succumb to evil in a fashion. It doesn't mean we're power hungry, said the Lords. We all do stuff we're not proud of, or we all do stuff that, we could have been better on that day. And it could be little things. But no matter what evil we do, it's always a choice of what we do today. And what I mean by that is no matter how awful we've been, Darth Vader killed off younglings, had a hand in killing millions of people, like destroying Alderaan, destroying whatever. The end of the day, Hayden Christensen is a Force Ghost celebrating with Ben and Luke, or Ben and Yoda. Obi-Wan and Yoda. Now, I know if you're talking big term stories of that, there's a lot of people who have a problem with that. They say that he can't get the happy ending because of what he did. And to me, I always say that's not really our choice. Because there's two sides to this story. There is the side that redemption needs to come from without, and redemption needs to come from within. The outside is not up to you. If people don't forgive you for the actions you've done, and rightfully so, Anakin isn't forgiven by people for everything he's done. I completely understand that, and he'll have to live with that or not live with that as it is. But that doesn't mean you still can't ever strive to do good. You can always change your path, despite what Yoda said, that the dark side will always, once you start down that dark path, forever will dominate your destiny. Yeah, you'll always be stained with some of your actions from the past, but it doesn't mean you can't take every day, no matter what happened yesterday or what happened the week before, last year, 5 years before. Every day is a new chance to do the right thing, to do something the right way. And only you can really forgive yourself. You can come across, I think at the end of the day, Anakin turned back to the good side. Yeah, and he turned back to the good side for a somewhat selfish reason, to save his kid. It was like he saved his kid, but he also did the right thing about bringing balance to the Force, destroying the evil overlord. And he returned to the light side. Luke forgave him, it feels like, at the end. And you know what? It feels like he forgave himself to a degree. You don't have to forgive him. And you don't have to forgive anybody who's evil. That's your cross to bear. But something I learned from this, as well as Ted Lasso to a degree, though, when you forgive someone, you're doing that for yourself. You're forgiving them. You're not forgiving it for them. You're forgiving it for yourself, because that weight that anger that you're holding at somebody, that you're holding that inside, that's going to crush you as well. You can only choose how to handle your life and to do what you think is right. You may have the weight of the world on you, it may come crushing down on you, but it's up to you to take every day and go, okay, what's today going to bring? What can I do today? And can I do something that's right and good for the world?
Mm.
And I think that's the Star Wars thing. I mean, we had it through Vader, Ben Solo, Asajj Ventress, maybe Crosshair. We don't know. But they all have redemption in their hearts, and we all have to make that choice, regardless. Regardless, you can. Last point I'll make. I know I'm kind of rambling, kind of going on tangents with it.
Yeah, it's good.
You have to make your. You have to when you make your choice. It's regardless of what anybody else thinks. You can't do something good just because you want to be forgiven, just because you want people to love you again, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. You have to do it whether or not they forgive you. And in fact, in spite of if they don't forgive you, that makes it even stronger. You still choose to do the right thing, even though they're not going to forgive you. Mm. That's a core value of yourself. You can always make the right choice to move forward.
Mm. Yeah, that's really powerful. And I think I can add onto it with the flip side of don't be afraid of the darkness that's in you. Learn to channel it. Learn to control it. I have grown up very angry at a lot of things. I have, my extracurricular activities are delved in violence, but that's how I channel my aggression. That's how I channel my anger. That's how I channel my hate. If I get angry at something, I go and hit pads, or I hit a bag, or I go spar with someone. But at the end of the day, we shake hands and we're all good after. And I guess the lesson from that is just because you may have darkness or the dark side in you, you can touch it, but don't let it consume you. It's okay to feel angry at things. It's okay to be pissed off at the world. It's okay to, if someone hurts you, it's okay to feel anger towards that person, as long as you don't let it consume you. There's the quote from Jedi Survivor that's like, look into the fire, it can warm you, but it can also burn you, it can consume you. So to never think that you have to be this white knight, you have to be a saint all the time, because no one can be. Like it's okay to feel, it's okay to touch the darkness, and but just don't let it take over you. I have to struggle with one thing. I struggle with every day is who I am is like a product of my anger. Like the music that I listen to, the things that I do, A, for a living, B, outside of everything I do. And if I'm scared, if I let that go, will I be me? Will I still be the same person? And that's a struggle that I have to deal with, because I like to think I'm a decent enough person, but I know some things that I've done, maybe some people will look at and frown upon, but they're what make me me, and they're how I deal with everyday life. And it goes back to the different perspectives. Good and evil is a matter of perspective. It's fine to have that in your heart, but don't let it consume you.
Right.
Don't take it out on other people, because I've lashed out at people who have done absolutely nothing wrong. And that is a prime example of me letting something ugly take control of me and being like, okay, this is getting too much. So I need to rein it in. But at the same time, accepting that is a part of me. And it always has been a part of me, and it always will be a part of me, because throughout my upbringing, and I'm not, this isn't me being a woe is me or boo hoo. Like, I had to learn a lot of shit for myself. and some of it may not have been the right lessons to learn, but it's how I deal. It's how I manifest everything that goes up here in here. So what I'm saying is, again, it's okay to touch the darkness. Just don't let it overcome you.
It's about balance. It's about, I don't know, it's just another core tenet of Star Wars is finding balance. George Lucas described balance as restoring balance to the Force as being the elimination of evil. But I feel like the balance of yourself is you can't deny a part of you, because denying a part of you leads to that thing eventually consuming you. It's about accepting yourself, accepting even the darker parts of yourself, working through it. And it's about how you act on it moving forward. You can accept things and not embrace it. You can accept it, channel it, let it go through you, let it work through. Let it work. It's magic. Let you work it through it, and then make your decision on how to move forward. Denying any part of yourself is never going to help you. It's gonna hurt you. Finding what is negative inside you and working through it to turn it into a positive in a way, or at least to make it, at least to work through what's going on, is the way you can move forward. So I love what you're saying. Absolutely love what you're saying, because not everybody has a life that's happy-go-lucky, full of roses, and everything. It's always dark side touching us in various fashions, and it's what we do with that dark side that really shows who we are and who we can be.
It's always the people that, and this is totally something in me. Anytime I see someone who like seems too happy, or like they've got things going too well for them, I'm like, my brain immediately goes to, you're so full of shit, because like there's no way. And that's something that I constantly have to check, because I'm like, again, going back to my first point, I didn't grow up the way they did.
Right.
Maybe things are all sunshine and rainbows for them.
Right. It's doubtful, because, like I said, I don't think anyone can have full rainbow love. But I understand what you're saying, absolutely. But it's like the same thing. It's like social media, right? I mean, everything, when you post on social media, it's almost always the best parts of you. And you look at somebody's social media, it's all pictures. It's like seeing that couple that posts every smiling, loving anniversary vacation picture they have, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they're getting divorced. Because we don't see that stuff. It's all stuff that's hidden in the background. It's all not what we present out as ourselves. We present out as ourselves as the person we want to be the most. And that's okay. It's okay to present yourself in that fashion. Just make sure that you're not presenting it to yourself that way. Make sure you're honest with yourself on where you are and where your feelings are. That's the most important part.
But then you can put out a tweet just being like, hey, I'm not feeling great today. And everyone's like, quit attention seeking, quit begging for help, quit fishing for compliments. It's like, no, it's like, okay, yeah, that does happen. But like some people genuinely are just like, hey guys, I feel like shit today. I'm not asking for help. I'm just
putting it out there.
I'm just putting it out there, trying to like write my thoughts down or something.
And you know what? I'm guilty of that as well. Sometimes I've seen those kind of posts, and a lot of times I'll reach out. Other times, like it's someone who I've dealt with a lot of times before. I'm like, I don't have the strength to help them today, so I scroll past. And like that's okay. You got to forgive yourself for that, because we can't be the hero for everybody every time.
And that is Luke Skywalker. To bring that up, that is Luke Skywalker thinking that he had to be there to stop the dark side again. And it almost ended up him killing his nephew.
That's right. Absolutely. It's a great point. You get impulsive about things. You try to do too much. You have to make sure, and it sounds selfish in a way, but I don't think it's not. You have to get yourself in the right place before you can help anybody else, really. If you're not in the right place and you're not helping anybody else, you're doing a disservice to you and to everybody else, to be honest with you. So it's important to reach out to the ones you love. And this actually leads into my next life lesson, is to reach out to the ones you love and the family that you have found, whether it's by blood or by choice. And those that are most important to you, those who you're strongest about, your crew. Make sure your crew is okay. You can't police the world. You can't save everyone. It's not to say you can't try or you can't like be genuine or caring when you see someone you don't know who is struggling. Absolutely, I'm not telling you not to reach out. I'm just saying make sure you have enough for yourself and for your family and your crew, because that's another thing a Star Wars tenet is. It's about family, whether it's found family, whether it's chosen family. I mean, throughout you have Luke with Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen, Luke with Obi-Wan. Then you have Leia with with Breha and Bail. You have the Rebels crew, which is a family in of itself, Kanan and Ezra. You have the Bad Batch, which is all about family with with
Din
the
and
Omega and
Grogu.
the crew. Din and Grogu and Bo-Katan and the Mandalorian and the Mandos, Grief Karga on his planet. It's all about the family that you love and the family you can find, because that's what gets us through. Everybody needs someone or something. You always find that if you're on your own, you're more likely going to fall. If you have the support of those around you, and you have a crew that can support you, life gets just a little easier, bearable, and there's more power together. You're more powerful together than you are alone. It's like they said, when Lando said at the end of Rise of Skywalker, there's more of us and there is of them. And it's about this family of the universe, and that's a universe family. So we should all strive for to have a universe family. As much as it's optimistic, as much as it might be almost too optimistic, obviously, it's very rose-colored. But that's what we should work towards. We should work towards finding and reaching out and accepting our differences, but at the same time celebrating our differences and knowing we can still work together and be a family. That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, the whole found family thing. I'm not close. I'm not very close with my blood relatives, but my crew. Obviously, you and I consider you and Jarvie like family at this point. But the guys that I travel the world with for fight weeks, like we've traveled the world together. But we're not blood related. But the experiences that we've had have bonded each other to the point that we all have the same tattoo and like different points, and like we all live by the same code and the same creed, and like they're from a country tens of thousands of miles away from me. We met one week that completely out the blue, and then we just all like started to click. And at a time in my life when I had no one here, I could just pick up the phone and message them and be like, hey guys, I feel like crap today. And then suddenly we're going to Poland. They're coming over here in a few weeks. We're having weeks in Vegas, and like through wins, losses, anything, like the only thing that matters is that we're there, like all together as a found family unit.
Right.
And like when I know I can't obviously speak for all of them, but I know when I'm around those guys, I'm like nothing in this world can touch me right now.
Right. Absolutely. Completely
So
agree.
yeah, it's that, like you said, that found family. It's important, you don't have to be blood to be family. And we've said family so many times. I feel like either John Lastrina or Vin Diesel is about to appear on the stream. But
You said it, man. Vin Diesel's found family. Completely agree. Last bit I'll dive into before we wrap things up. It comes from that you mentioned. I mentioned, and you mentioned, to follow up on found family. You said you have a relationship with your blood relatives. I'm adopted, so I found my family recently over the past couple of years, and I have a strong relationship now with my brother, for example. But I don't have a very strong relationship with any of my blood family as well. But also, what's important about that is legacy. You make your own legacy. It doesn't matter where you came from. It matters where you're going. And that's why
it matters where you come, Joe. Sorry.
Exactly. It's something that why, and I'm going to lose a lot of viewers for this, and I'll probably lose a lot more viewers if I ever do the video on this that I'm thinking about doing. Why the Rey claiming the name of Skywalker, the Enterprise Skywalker, actually means a lot to me.
Do it.
We have
Fuck him. Do it.
Oh, I am. I'm going to do it at some point. It's a matter of time. And here's a preview of it. In this little comment I have to make is it's very powerful to me that Rey, who I don't care if you like the story or not, whatever, it is what it is. In the canon, in the story, Rey has discovered that she is the granddaughter of Palpatine. spoiler alert, Rey is a Palpatine. He comes from the legacy of the most evil man in the history of the universe, as far as we know. Outside of Darth Bane, maybe. I don't know. Evil.
But even then, like bringing back to Darth Bane and going back to the lesson of don't be afraid to touch the darkness within you. Bane realized that the Sith, like Yoda realized the Jedi had gone too far.
Mm-hmm.
Bane realized the Sith had gone too far and was like, you know what? I'm cutting this off. Like I'm getting rid of all of you, and there's only going to be 2 because only 2 of us can even 2 of them can't even manage it. But sorry, go on, continue as you were saying.
But Palpatine is the embodiment of evil in the galaxy. Rey is his granddaughter, so that's her legacy. Is that she came from evil. It's what she chooses to do with that. She chooses to put aside the name Palpatine and to choose the name Skywalker because that's how she identifies. She identifies as someone who wants to do good. And she knows that Luke Skywalker, her mentor, Luke Skywalker, was someone who wanted to do good, whether he had failures or not. Her and Princess Leia, General Leia, one of the people who tried to do the best in the universe that possibly could. It was always a beacon of hope, a beacon of love, a beacon of positivity. And that's what Rey wants to do. So, of course, she names herself Skywalker because that's her legacy. She's rejecting the legacy of her blood, of her name, and choosing to make her legacy mean something else. And that's a powerful thing to me. It's what you mean most. It doesn't matter what you've done in your history or what your bloodline has done in your history. It's what are you going to do? How are you going to take that step forward? And that's the most important lesson I think Star Wars can offer is make your choices, choose the right way, be that powerful beacon. Be that Skywalker. Choose to be a Skywalker and how you live your life. Yeah. That was a great life lesson. That was a great choice of topic, Matty. I'm very happy you made this choice because it turned out very well, and I'm very excited about this conversation that we just had.
Yeah, it's good. I'm glad. Like I'm all for like the having. Like I was having a conversation with my friend Logan earlier about the theory, my theory that Dryden Voss is a Mandalorian. Like I can have conversations like that all day, but it's the conversations like these that I'm like, okay, let me draw this out of you. Let me. I want to know where you stand on this thing.
Right, 100%.
Because I feel like that's. I'm gonna get more out of a conversation like this than I am out of a million speculative conversations. Not saying they're not fun and I don't enjoy them, but I personally get more out of conversations like this.
Agree, even though we didn't mention Hondo Onaka once, and that's such a shame. But
listen, the lessons that I have learned from Hondo probably lean more towards the dark part. they're not lessons that I would want you to teach your kid.
No, you're not wrong, but they are life lessons of how to survive sometimes. And you know what? I will. You know what? Fuck it. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna bring it in here. There is lessons to learn from Hondo. Hondo is one of the most selfish people in the galaxy. He's all about profit, all about getting as much out of things as possible.
Trying to kidnap kids. Yep.
Trying to kidnap kids. But even he has a soft spot and tries to do the right thing at times. There's times where even at the darkest part of his heart, there's a little hint of gold. Everybody has that little hint of gold if you can find it. And he has found it several times with the younglings, with Ezra. There's nothing I wouldn't do for that boy. It's there. You might have to dig really deep. But everyone has that little bright spot somewhere deeper than there's always good in someone. So that's their life lesson tangent at the end of the day. And that's where we're going to wrap.
We got Hondo in.
we got Hondo in as we always do. Matty, where can the folks find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Matty Gunner, Instagram Matty_Gunner. You can find my band Mourner, MOURNER, on all DSPs. You can find me every fortnight with Mr. PLD and Richard Eric Jarvie for Class Action. Starting this weekend, I believe. You say Saturday we're going to start dropping them?
Saturday will drop.
Saturday for MID Classified. A look at all of the Mission Impossible movies leading up to Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. We have the very first video talking about Mission Impossible this weekend. Next weekend, we're going to do in my opinion, the most criminally underrated action movie of all time in MI2. And obviously here for Holy Snokes.
Absolutely. You can find me at _Denuzio on Twitter. Of course, I'm all over PLD projects. Am I declassified is one of the few things I'm not going to be involved with overall. I might make an appearance here or there.
I want to have the argument with you and Johnny.
We'll make work. We'll make some things work, I'm sure. But you can find me every week on Holy Snokes. Find me every fortnight, like I said, with Mr. Jarvie, with Mr. Gunner on Class Action. The other opposite fortnights with PJ Campbell doing two mediocre white dudes on the film. Crown Jewels, A Journey Through Queen is on my sister YouTube channel on the same audio feed, but PLD Products Crown Jewels. This week we are taking off due to my, I had a little bit of an illness, not bad, but it prevented me from doing much this week on one of my podcasts. Next week we'll return with Love of My Life. And we also have two more review where me and Lego go through the V franchise. That should be coming soon. The first week of June, we'll have the V The Final Battle, 3 episodes about V The Final Battle, and we'll get into the weekly series after that. And finally, the Harris Dance is coming the end of June. I'm aiming for the first episode, if not early July, depending on how I get things done. But it should be soon. And if you like what you've seen, this is the first time you've been here, hit that like, hit that subscribe, leave us comments, leave us ratings. And if you like the channel even further than that, patreon.com/PLD Project. We have a great crew. Austin Cadell, Jeremiah Morris, Matty Kern, Brendan Buckingham, Jeff Altman. All of you, cannot thank you enough for what you've done, and everybody involved in the Patreon. You really help us keep the lights on. Have some great fun there with some extra content. Like we had our first ever 4 mediocre white dudes chill hangout session where we talked about the news and things. That was exclusive Patreon podcast. That was a lot of fun. Looking forward to doing that again with the 4 of us, the mediocre white dudes, the mediocre European white dudes, both of us. American side, the European side, we love it. But that's it for this week. We'll be back next week. We don't know what the topic is going to be yet. Matt and I are going to have to discuss that soon. I do know that on June 28th, when the Gallery Season 3 of Mandalorian comes out, we'll definitely be tackling that. Yeah. And of course, when Ahsoka comes out, we'll be tackling that for sure in Skeleton Crew ad nauseum. But that's neither here nor there. That's then. This is now.
When does Indy come out?
The 30th of June. 30th of June. That's what 2 mediocre white dudes are working towards at this point.
I might have a Star Wars related idea for that, but we'll talk about that off camera.
Okay. Well, I'm all of a sudden very intrigued indeed. But that's neither here nor there. Until next time.
May the Force be with you. Always.